This time, we're going to be tackling the philosophy of memory. We've got a really interesting book to dig into today. Memory, a self-referential account by Jordi Fernandez.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this one.
Me too.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but like I usually think of memories as just like mental snapshots.
Yeah, like little pictures in your head.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But Fernandez, he kind of throws that whole idea out the window.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He's saying that memories are like almost self-aware, like they remember how they were created.
That's fascinating.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Like it's pretty wild stuff.
So it's not just about the content of the memory itself, but also how that memory came to be.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
So before we get, too deep into all the crazy stuff,
Yeah.
maybe we could just like back up a bit.
Sure.
And just talk about the different types of memory that Fernandez talks about.
Yeah, good idea.
Because he makes a distinction, right?
Right. So he talks about two main types: semantic memory and episodic memory.
Okay, so what's semantic memory?
So semantic memory is like all about facts and knowledge.
Okay.
Like, knowing that water boils at 100 degrees Celsius.
Right, like textbook stuff.
Exactly.
Gotcha. And then what about episodic memory?
Episodic memory is about our personal experiences.
Okay.
So it's like the memory of that amazing vacation you took or that embarrassing moment you wish you could forget.
Oh, yeah, those ones.
Exactly. And these memories, they often involve like mental images, emotions, and even a sense of reliving the experience.
So it's not just like, oh, I went on vacation. It's like I can remember the feeling, the sun on my skin, and the taste of the food I ate.
Yeah, it's that rich, multi-layered experience.
And that's what Fernandez is really focusing on in the book.
Yeah, these episodic memories, they're really at the heart of his exploration.
Okay.
And, it leads to a really interesting question, like what makes a mental image a memory and not just, imagination?
Oh, that is a good question.
Hmm.
Because I can imagine myself like, winning an Olympic gold medal, but that doesn't make it a memory.
So what's the difference? What makes something a memory?
Right, like where's the line?
And that's what he's trying to get at.
Okay, so how does he even start to answer that?
Well, he digs into this concept of mnemonic content,
Okay.
which is essentially what makes a memory represent something that actually happened.
Mm-hmm.
And he analyzes a bunch of different theories that have tried to explain this.
Okay, I love theories. Tell me about these theories.
All right, so one theory is called the objective view.
Okay.
And this view basically says that memories are like neutral recordings of the facts.
Okay.
Kind of like security camera footage, like devoid of any feelings or interpretations.
But that doesn't really feel right, though, does it? Because, memories are so much more personal in that. If I think about my first day of school, it's not just like a list of facts.
Right.
It's like all these emotions, like nervousness and excitement and maybe a little bit of fear.
Absolutely. And you're hitting on the main critique of the objective view.
Right.
It misses that element of personal experience.
Right, right. Okay, so if that one's not quite right, what's the next one?
So then you have the subjective view.
Yeah.
And this one goes in the complete opposite direction.
Okay.
It says that memories are all about our own individual experience of an event, not necessarily, objective truth.
So like two people could have completely different memories of the same event, and that's okay because they're both just remembering their own subjective experiences.
All about individual perspective.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. But is that the whole story?
Well, Fernandez argues that even the subjective view doesn't fully capture the uniqueness of memory.
So we're getting warmer, but we're still missing something.
Exactly. There's still a key ingredient missing.
Okay, I'm hooked. What else is there?
So then we have the conjunctive view. And this view tries to blend both the objective and the subjective aspects of memory.
Okay.
So it's saying a memory is both about what happened and how we experienced it. But even this, Fernandez argues, doesn't tell the whole story.
Okay, so what is Fernandez's big idea then? Like, what's his alternative?
He proposes something called the causal self-reference approach.
Causal self-reference. Okay, that sounds complicated.
It's a bit of a mouthful, but the basic idea is that imagine a memory is like a note that you wrote to yourself.
Okay.
Not only does it contain the information, but it also has like a timestamp and your signature on it.
Ah, so it knows where it came from.
Exactly. It knows where it came from and who created it.
Wow, so you're saying memories actually remember themselves.
That's the gist of it.
Like they have this built-in awareness of their own origin.
Yeah. And this has some pretty huge implications for how we understand the relationship between memory and truth.
Oh, okay. This is where it gets interesting.
Right. It's not just about whether the content of the memory is accurate. It's also about the fact that the memory itself, like, accurately reflects the past perception that led to its creation.
Okay, my brain is doing backflips right now.
Yeah.
Can you give me like a real-world example?
Sure. So let's say you remember seeing a red apple on your kitchen counter this morning.
Okay, yeah.
According to Fernandez, your memory isn't just about the apple itself.
Mm-hmm.
It's also about the fact that you saw the apple and that this perception led to the formation of the memory.
So it's like the memory has a little note attached that says, this is based on what you saw earlier. It's not just red apple, it's, I remember seeing a red apple, and that's why I have this memory now.
Precisely. And that seemingly small difference helps us understand why a memory can be true, even if the original perception was flawed.
Oh, how so?
Let's say, for example, the apple wasn't actually red,
Okay.
but you saw it under a red light. Your memory of seeing a red apple is still accurate, in the sense that it reflects what you perceived at the time.
That's so interesting. So it's not that our memories are like lying to us.
Right.
They're just faithfully reporting what we experienced, even if that experience was based on a misperception.
That's a great way to put it.
Wow. Okay. So it's not about whether the memory itself is true or false. It's about whether it accurately reflects what we perceive.
And the self-referential nature of memory just adds a whole new layer of complexity to how we understand its relationship to truth.
You know, it's funny because I always thought memory was like pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
But this is making me realize it's way more intricate than I ever imagined.
Fernandez goes on to explore how memory deals with time, how we develop a sense of ownership over our memories, and even whether memory can create new knowledge.
Oh my gosh, that's like a whole other can of worms.
It is. We'll have to unpack those mysteries in our next segment.
Okay, so last time we were talking about how memories aren't just like passive recordings.
Right.
They're like these active little time capsules.
Yeah, like remembering their own creation.
Exactly. But
Yeah.
it's not just what we remember, right?
Right.
It's also like that feeling of when something happened.
That feeling of pastness.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
Yeah.
how does that fit into this whole self-referential thing?
That's a great question. And that feeling is actually, it's crucial to the whole memory experience. Fernandez actually explores different ways that memory handles time,
Okay.
and it's more complicated than you might think.
I'm starting to realize memory is like way more nuanced than I ever gave it credit for.
Definitely.
So walk me through it. How do our memories actually represent time?
So one idea is what's called absolute time.
Okay.
And this is like our memories are pinpointing the exact moment on a timeline.
Okay.
Monday at 3:1 p.m., that sort of thing.
But that doesn't really feel like how my memory works, you know? Like, I know some memories are from years ago,
Right.
but I doubt I could tell you the exact date and time for most of them.
Yeah, that level of precision, it's not really how we experience memory.
Yeah, for sure.
So Fernandez also looks at this other idea called relative time.
Okay.
This is more about how long ago something feels.
Okay.
A few days, a year, a decade. It's less about the calendar
Yeah.
and more about our internal sense of time passing.
Okay, that definitely feels more
Recent.
familiar. Like, some memories feel so recent, even though they happened years ago.
Right.
While others, like, they feel distant, even if they were just last month.
Yeah, it's not about the clock time. It's how the memory makes us feel.
Exactly, it's that feeling, yeah.
But even relative time, it doesn't quite capture the whole picture.
Okay.
There's this emotional, subjective quality to how we experience time in our memories
Mm-hmm.
that neither of these approaches fully explains.
So we need something more.
This is where Fernandez suggests that it ties back to that self-referential nature of memory.
So how does the memory remembering itself
Right.
actually link to our sense of time?
It's still a bit of a puzzle, but think about it this way. A memory isn't just representing the event,
Mm-hmm.
it's also representing the process of how it became a memory.
Okay.
And that process takes place over time.
Right.
So the memory itself, it's like imbued with that temporal dimension.
So it's storing the flow of information, not just like a snapshot of the information.
It's a fascinating idea, isn't it?
It really is.
It suggests that our experience of time in memory is like deeply intertwined with the structure of memory itself.
Okay, that's starting to make sense.
Good.
So we've got content, we've got time. What else is going on in these self-referential memories?
Well, there's another crucial element
Right.
that is ownership.
Oh,
It's not like watching a movie.
right.
It's like we're back in that moment,
Yeah,
even if it was years ago.
it's part of who I am.
But, you know, just to make things even more interesting, Fernandez, he introduces us to this patient, RB,
Okay.
who had a really strange experience with this.
I love a good case study. Okay, so What happened to RB?
So RB, he had, vivid memories, just like anyone else.
Yeah.
But here's the catch.
Okay.
They didn't feel like his own.
Oh my gosh, that's so bizarre. Like his memories were, disowned somehow.
Yeah, it's like they were detached.
How could that even happen?
One interpretation is that maybe RB wasn't able to connect those past experiences to his current sense of self.
So, like, he's looking at a childhood photo
Right.
and thinking, sure, that's me, but I don't feel any connection to that kid.
Exactly.
It's not about forgetting the facts.
Right.
It's about losing that feeling of me-ness in the memory.
That's one way to think about it. But Fernandez, he suggests that it's not just about identity.
Okay.
It's about what he calls endorsement.
Endorsement.
Yeah.
Like I'm giving my stamp of approval to a memory.
Yeah. It's about that feeling of authenticity,
Okay.
that these memories truly belong to us and reflect our past.
Okay.
And RB, even though he recognized himself in the memories, he lacked that endorsement.
Oh, interesting.
He knew the events happened, but they didn't feel like they were part of his story.
So it's not enough to just like remember the facts.
Right.
We need that gut feeling of, yes, I was there, I experienced this, this is a part of who I am.
That feeling of ownership.
Yeah, exactly.
And this idea of endorsement, actually, it gets even more intriguing.
Okay, how so?
Because Fernandez thinks it applies beyond just memory.
Now I'm really on the edge of my seat.
So think about it. We often talk about, feeling like our thoughts are out of control.
Yeah.
Or experiencing emotions that seem alien to us.
Right.
Could this be a lack of endorsement at work?
So you're saying there could be, like, disowned thoughts or disowned feelings?
Potentially.
Just like RB's disowned memories.
It might sound a little strange.
Yeah.
But consider this. When we feel overwhelmed by anxiety or have thoughts that just won't shut off, do those feel fully ours?
Oh, okay.
Or is there a part of us that's like resisting them,
Right.
feeling like they're coming from somewhere else?
I can definitely relate to that.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes I get so stressed that my thoughts just, like, spiral out of control.
Yeah.
And it almost feels like they're not even my thoughts anymore.
That's a great example. And in some mental health conditions, this feeling of disownership is even more pronounced.
Oh, wow.
Where people might experience thoughts or actions as being controlled by, external forces.
Like they're not in the driver's seat of their own mind. So how does this whole endorsement thing help us understand that?
Well, Fernandez connects endorsement to justification.
Oh.
We tend to own or endorse things that we have reasons for.
Okay.
Whether it's a belief, an emotion, or an action. If we can, make sense of it, justify it to ourselves, we're more likely to feel that sense of ownership.
So, like, if I'm feeling anxious about an upcoming presentation, but I can, connect that back to specific reasons, like, oh, it's a really important presentation, or public speaking just isn't really my forte, then I'm more likely to, accept and own that anxiety.
Exactly. You're providing justification for the anxiety, making it easier to endorse.
Okay, that makes sense.
But if a feeling or thought just seems to come out of nowhere with no, apparent cause or reason, we might resist it.
Okay.
Feel like it doesn't belong to us.
Like it's an intruder in our own mind. It's such an interesting point.
It is.
Because it suggests that, part of mental well-being might involve understanding and justifying our inner experiences.
Yeah.
Finding those reasons so they don't feel so alien.
It's about making peace with our own minds. And it shows how Fernandez is really using this deep dive into memory to shed light on these much broader questions about self-knowledge and agency.
Wow, this is seriously blowing my mind.
Good, I'm glad.
So we've got self-referential memories, time, ownership, and now endorsement.
Yeah.
Where does Fernandez take us next?
He takes us into the realm of epistemology, which is basically the study of knowledge.
Right. Epistemology sounds intimidating, but I'm definitely up for the challenge.
It's not as scary as it sounds.
Okay, good.
It's basically just asking big questions about what memory can tell us about the world, about ourselves, and, how reliable that knowledge really is.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Let's dive in.
All right. So one of the key concepts he explores is immunity to error through misidentification.
What is immunity to error through misidentification?
Sure. So it's simpler than it sounds. Think about it this way. Can you ever be wrong about it being you who's having a particular thought or feeling?
I mean, it seems like that's pretty basic knowledge, right?
Yeah.
Who else could it be?
That's the essence of IEM.
Okay.
It says that certain judgments based on our mental states are immune to error through misidentification.
Okay.
It's logically impossible to be wrong about it being you experiencing those things.
Okay, I think I'm getting it. So, like, if I remember giving a speech,
Yeah.
I might get some of the details wrong.
Right.
But I can't be mistaken about it being me up there talking.
Precisely. And this applies to, all sorts of mental experiences.
Yeah.
You have this, direct, immediate knowledge of your own thoughts, feelings, sensations.
Right.
You can't misidentify yourself as the one having them.
So it's like this unbreakable connection to our own inner world.
To our own subjective experience.
Yeah, exactly. No matter what, we know it's us experiencing it.
But of course, Fernandez being Fernandez, he doesn't just leave it at that.
Oh, no, of course not.
He throws in a few curveballs, like the idea of quasi-memory.
Quasi-memory. That sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie.
It kind of is.
Okay, tell me more. Tell me more.
So imagine you have this vivid memory, but it turns out it was implanted.
What?
Maybe through hypnosis, or it's like a false memory, but one that feels totally real. So that kind of throws a wrench into that whole can't be wrong about it being you thing.
Right. It raises questions about IEM.
Yeah.
If a quasi-memory feels just like a genuine memory,
right,
could we be tricked into thinking we were the one experiencing it?
Yeah.
Even if we weren't actually there? It's a tricky one.
So how does Fernandez even deal with that? How does he address that challenge?
Well, he dives deep into the differences between real memories and these quasi-memories.
Yeah.
Ultimately arguing that even these fabricated memories still are memories.
Even if they're based on a false premise.
Even if the origin is different.
So it's even a fake memory can't totally sever that connection to our sense of self.
It's complicated, but that's the gist of his argument.
Wow, that's fascinating.
And it's not the only challenge he explores.
Oh, there's more. He also brings up the concept of observer memories.
Observer memories, what are those?
Have you ever had a memory where you're seeing yourself in the scene?
Oh.
Almost like you're watching a movie of your own life.
Actually, yeah. I have a few memories from childhood.
Yeah.
Where I'm kind of seeing myself from above.
Yeah.
Like I'm floating outside my own body. It's always felt so strange.
That's a great example of an observer memory.
Okay.
And these seem to challenge IEM because, if you're watching yourself from the outside,
right,
doesn't that imply that you have to identify yourself in the scene?
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Could you misidentify the person you're observing as someone else?
Like I'm watching a home video.
Yeah.
And suddenly I'm like, wait, is that really me or is that my sister?
Exactly. But Fernandez, he carefully analyzes these observer memories.
Yeah.
And he says they're still fundamentally rooted in our own experiences.
Right.
It's not like we're truly observing a stranger. We're accessing our own memories from a different viewpoint.
So it's still me in those memories, just seen through a different lens.
And he ultimately defends the idea that even with observer memories, IEM remains in place.
Okay.
We have this, direct, unbreakable link to our own experiences, even when accessed through this kind of external perspective.
That is wild. This is really making me rethink everything I thought I knew about memory. Okay, so we've covered IEM.
Yeah.
But you mentioned last time that Fernandez also explores whether memory can be a generative source of knowledge.
Yeah.
What does that even mean?
So it gets to the heart of what memory is for. Is it just a storage unit for information that we've gathered from other sources?
Okay.
Or can it actually create new knowledge?
Ooh, that's a really big question.
Yeah.
So, is memory a passive recorder or an active architect of knowledge?
It's a great debate.
What's the verdict?
So there are two main camps in this debate.
Okay.
Preservatism and generativism.
Preservatism versus generativism. Lay it on me. What's the difference?
So preservatism says that memory can only hold on to knowledge that we've gained from other sources.
Okay.
Like perception, testimony, or reason.
Right. So it's like a vault.
Yeah.
Protecting our valuables, but not creating anything new.
Exactly.
Gotcha. Okay, but then what about generativism?
Yeah.
How could memory actually, generate knowledge?
So generativism argues that in some cases, memory can give us new justification for a belief knowledge that we didn't have before remembering.
So it's not just a storehouse. Okay, so how does memory pull off this, culinary feat?
Right.
What kind of examples does Fernandez use to support generativism?
So he digs into some really intriguing scenarios.
Okay.
One involves what he calls abstraction in memory.
Abstraction. Like abstract art. Is my memory suddenly turning into like a Picasso painting?
Not quite, but it's about simplifying a complex memory,
Okay.
focusing on like the key elements and leaving out extraneous detail.
So if I'm trying to remember like a complicated route I took,
Yeah.
I might like simplify it in my mind,
Right.
focus on the major landmarks and turns
Exactly.
instead of like every single street and sign.
That's a great example.
Okay.
And Fernandez argues that this process of abstraction, it can actually make our beliefs more reliable.
Wait, so by simplifying a memory,
Yeah.
we can actually strengthen our knowledge.
Potentially, yes.
That seems kind of counterintuitive.
It might seem strange,
Yeah.
but think about it.
Okay.
By focusing on those essential elements,
Yeah.
we're less likely to get tripped up by those like irrelevant details
Right.
that could lead to errors.
So it's like decluttering our mental attic,
I like that.
getting rid of the junk so we can see the important stuff more clearly.
And Fernandez uses this idea of abstraction to really challenge that preservatist view.
Right.
He argues that sometimes the act of remembering, of simplifying and organizing our experiences, can generate new insights and justifications that we didn't have before.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. It's like memory is so much more than just passive storage.
Exactly.
It's an active process of shaping and refining our understanding of the world.
That's a great way to put it.
Wow.
It's really quite remarkable.
It is.
And this generative aspect of memory has some pretty big implications for how we see our own personal histories and the reliability of our beliefs.
All right, so we're back for the final part of our deep dive into memory.
It's been quite the journey, hasn't it?
It really has. We've been talking about how memories are self-aware and how they deal with time and ownership.
And all those fascinating cases of, like, disowned thoughts and feelings.
Right, exactly. And last time, we were starting to talk about how Fernandez argues that memory can actually create new knowledge.
Which is a pretty mind-blowing idea.
It really is. And you were about to give us an example with this thing called abstraction.
Sure. So Fernandez, he gives this scenario with a character named Jim, who's trying to remember how many people were at a meeting. And at first, Jim, he remembers all these kind of random details, the room, what people were wearing, snippets of conversation.
Sounds familiar.
But none of that is actually helping him figure out the head count.
Right. Like, who cares what people were wearing? I just need to know how many people were there.
But then Jim, he kind of shifts his focus.
Okay.
And he starts just picturing the seats around the table.
Okay.
And whether they were, filled or empty.
So he's like simplifying the memory?
That's it. Getting rid of all the extra details.
Zeroing in on the key information.
And by doing that, he's actually able to come up with a much more accurate estimate.
So he's remembering less stuff.
Right.
But his memory is actually more accurate.
Yeah. Fernandez says this act of abstraction actually made Jim's knowledge stronger.
Wow. So it's not just about remembering more stuff. It's about remembering the right stuff.
That's the key.
Sometimes less is more, huh?
It's counterintuitive, but it seems to be the case.
It really is. So this is another example of how memory isn't just passively preserving information. Right?
Exactly.
It's actually actively shaping and sometimes even creating knowledge.
It's a really powerful idea.
It really is. It's making me think about how I approach my own memories,
In what way?
Like, maybe I need to be more of a, mental minimalist, declutter my mind a bit.
It's definitely a strategy worth trying.
Yeah, I think so too. So are there other ways that memory might generate knowledge?
Fernandez explores a few other really interesting scenarios.
Okay.
One is this idea of what he calls inattentive remembering.
Inattentive remembering, what is that?
So it's when we remember things we didn't even consciously notice at the time.
Wait, how can you remember something you didn't even notice?
Think about a time you were driving home and you're kind of lost in thought.
Oh, yeah, I do that all the time.
You weren't really paying attention to the drive itself. But later, you can recall details about the route, things you didn't actively notice.
Yeah. Like, my brain is on autopilot, and then I get home, and I'm like, how did I even get here? So the question is, if you can remember those details,
right?
Did you actually know them before you remembered?
That's a big question.
If you weren't paying attention, can you really say you had that knowledge?
It's a fascinating puzzle, isn't it?
It is. It's like, was it always in my memory somewhere, or did the act of remembering actually, bring it into existence?
It gets at the heart of the nature of knowledge.
Yeah. So what's Fernandez's take on that?
He uses these cases of inattentive remembering to suggest that sometimes memory can bring, implicit or unconscious knowledge to the surface. And that can actually give us new justification for our beliefs.
So it's not just about digging up, old files from the archives. It's like uncovering hidden gems within our own minds.
It's a beautiful way to put it.
It's like, whoa, okay, this is getting pretty deep. Because if memory can do all this, if it can generate new knowledge and justification,
Right.
does that change how we see our own personal histories?
It's a question worth considering.
Yeah, because, like, are you saying that the me I remember might not be the me I actually was?
It's possible. If memory is this active process, constantly shaping and reshaping our experiences,
Right.
can we ever be totally certain that our memories are, like, perfect reflections of our past selves?
Yeah.
Or are we always, subtly revising our own stories to fit our current perspectives?
That's a bit unsettling,
It can be.
but also, like, really fascinating.
Absolutely.
It's like our memories aren't just photo albums. They're like autobiographies that we're constantly editing and rewriting.
It's a powerful analogy.
It is, and it highlights how central memory is to our understanding of ourselves, right?
Yeah.
It's not just about the past. It's about how we make sense of our lives and our actions and our beliefs in the present. So what you're saying is, our memories are as much about the present and the future as they are about the past.
Memory's dynamic, ever-evolving.
It's not fixed.
Yeah.
It's constantly shaping and being shaped by our experiences.
Exactly. And that's what makes it so captivating.
Well, listeners, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into Jordi Fernandez's memory, a self-referential account.
It's been a pleasure exploring this with you.
Likewise, we've talked about the complexities of mnemonic content, the feeling of pastness, ownership, endorsement, and even the nature of knowledge itself.
Phew. We covered a lot of ground.
We did.
Huh.
So, as always, we encourage you to keep exploring these ideas on your own.
Yeah, keep thinking about it.
Because if our memories are indeed self-aware, constantly shaping and reshaping how we understand the world and ourselves,
Right.
what does that mean for how we live our lives?
How we make decisions.
Yeah, and how we write our own stories.
It's a big question.
It is a big question. It's definitely something to ponder. So, until next time, keep diving deep,